Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. Let's get started. I want to start off with facts, before every episode for now, and just to make things fun. So the fact I want to share with you today is that Luka Doncic either scored or assisted on 77 points of the Mavs. 111 points in the Game 7 yesterday, and that breaks the record for the NBA all time. 77 points, either points or assisted on, which is pretty impressive if you think about it. And I'm going to get into Luka and the Mavs later on in the show. Now, before I get into basketball, I do want to talk about some football real quick, because news broke yesterday that Julio Jones got traded to the Tennessee Titans. In exchange, the Atlanta Falcons get a second round, a fourth round pick, and then Tennessee will get a sixth round pick from Atlanta. So as I like to do with all trades, I like to establish who won and who lost the trade. Now, a lot of people are going to say that the Titans have obviously won it. I do admit that the Titans did a good job on getting Julio for a good price. They didn't have to give up a first rounder like the Atlanta wanted. They were able to do a first, second rounder, which is good. What I want to go over and break down the Julio Jones trade and see who really won the trade. So obviously, with Julio Jones in the lineup, the Tennessee Titans are going to be scoring a lot of points. Now, they're a run-heavy offense first, but even then, I feel like whether they run the ball with Derrick Henry or pass it with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown at the wide receiver positions, I feel like they should be able to score a lot of points. That's not going to be the issue. But if I remember correctly, I think the Titans still have a bad defense. Think about it. The Titans still will have a bad defense. And as you saw in the Super Bowl, defenses are a big part in winning the championship. Now, you don't have to be the best defense, but you do have to be a good defense, which Tennessee's not. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Julio Jones is not getting any younger. He's like 32, if I remember correctly, and is getting overpaid and is injury riddled at this point in his career. Like, he only has a year or two left of his prime, if he's still even in at this point, before he's going to start to fade away. So basically, with knowing that, you need to win a Super Bowl in the next year or two. Will Tennessee win? Doesn't look like it. You have to deal with Mahomes and the Chiefs, Josh Allen, the Bills, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, Baker Mayfield, that explosive Cleveland offense, and even young people like Justin Herbert, who's on the up and come up. And even though Trevor Lawrence's team looks like you still have to deal with quarterbacks like him. And since Tennessee's a bad defense, they can be had. Carson Wentz within his own division, and players like that. They're going to have to deal with a lot of good offenses, so their bad defense is not going to be able to stop all of them. And also, to keep in mind, Tennessee's going to have the offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith went to become the head coach of Atlanta. So good luck, Julio Jones, figuring out the new system and all that. And who knows if that new system is even going to be good or not with the new offensive coordinator. So now, if you're talking about Tennessee being in the playoff landscape, a playoff contender, then yeah, this helps them be a playoff contender. Yes, this helps them make the playoffs potentially. But if you're talking about them being a Super Bowl contender, the answer is no. And for me, what a Super Bowl contender is can you at least make the AFC or NFC championship game? Can you at least make that? Is there a scenario where you can see yourself being there? If you can, then I consider yourself a contender. But if you can't get there, and I don't see Tennessee getting there, then they're not a playoff contender. So this trade, therefore, means nothing, and Atlanta wins the trade. Now, I know Atlanta needs to hit on the picks that they will pick from this trade, but if they can get a good second rounder with their pick that they just got from Tennessee, or even fourth rounder, which is kind of iffy, if they can get good picks from these, they clearly win this trade because Atlanta's rebuilding, and that's what they needed as picks. So now I want to move on to basketball. So like I said, I'm going to go over all the teams that lost in the first round and go over what they need to do to become better next year, and therefore become an actual either title contender or a definite playoff contender or whatever level they need to do. So let's get started with the West. So let's get started with Memphis. I love the direction this franchise is headed. not a lot of things that they have to do to get better here, in all honesty. It's mostly within. If John Moran can now take the next step and play like he's an undisputed all-star, and if Darren Brooks, if he can become like a borderline all-star player, then if Jaren Jackson with a full season under his belt, because he was injured for most of this season, so if he can get a full season under his belt and improve, and Jonas Valanciunas can continue to improve, then this will be a playoff team once again next year. And then they could finally maybe contend with getting to the next round and going through that next step of the process. Because they're not going to get to change the contender next year, but they can still improve and get to maybe second round of the playoffs next year. They just got to improve within. Next is the Lakers. Now the Lakers have a lot to work to do on their roster. They're going to have LeBron, AD, Caruso, KCP, and apparently Dennis Schroeder wants to return. That's because he has such a bad performance. No team's going to want to pay him the money he's going to want to pay, so he'll have to come back. But other than that, I feel like you need to get rid of the rest of the roster. Trade Kyle Kuzma. He's not doing well. Go ahead and let go Montrezl Harrell and Andre Drummond and Marcus Morris and stuff like that. Markieff Morris, I should say. Just get rid of all of them. And if I'm Lakers in free agency or even trade, you got to go get yourself DeMar DeRozan out there, who could be another scorer that can help ease off of the old LeBron and injured AD, or even get yourselves 3-and-D guys like an Eric Gordon, the trademark, or steal PJ Tucker from the Bucks or something like that. That's what they need to do, because obviously with LeBron and AD, if they're both healthy, they're still going to be in top contention. But in order to get themselves over the hump, especially for Brooklyn, they got to get the right role players. So getting these role players, I suggested, would help. Next is Portland. It's time for a reboot, and I think Portland knows it. That's why they parted ways with their head coach Terry Stotts. Now, as far as who they're going to get, they're talking about Chauncey Billups, who might be a good fit. He played on a very good defense, back in Detroit with the grit and grind type of things. So he might be able to help out defensively, which they need. D'Antoni is another option. Just stop that. Stop that. Defense is what Portland needs, not more offense with D'Antoni. Let's see who else. I know they're looking at Jawan Morgan, for the head coach from Michigan, but I think he's better college coach right now. I don't think he'll translate to NBA, quite frankly. And then they talked about Damian Lillard wants Jason Kidd, but Jason Kidd has opted himself out of the running there. So we'll see what they do there. But in my opinion, I feel like they need to shape up the roster, not just the coaching staff as well. So I feel like they obviously want to keep Dame, but I feel like they need to trade C.J. McCollum and get yourself a better player, more reliable player, like let's say Paul George, if the Clippers can't make it far and the Clippers decide to blow things up. They need to do something like that, because as presently constructed, Portland's not going to get anywhere. We've seen it a million times over now. They're not going to get anywhere at this point. That's what they need to do in order to get better. Dallas. I've already gone to a mini soliloquy back in my last podcast on what's at stake for the Mavs, and they blew it. If you can't win a home game, you don't deserve to advance in the playoffs, and that's what happened. And it's clear at this point what the Mavs need to do to get in championship contention. Now, they're going to keep Rick Carlisle, which in my opinion they should not do, but as Mark Cuban says, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. In my opinion, I feel like, yes, that can be true, but sometimes a new voice helps. Like, for example, Doc Rivers, a championship head coach, a good head coach. Clippers players didn't want him anymore. They brought in Ty Lue, same pedigree. And look at that. If the Clippers can advance the next round, it looks like Tyronn Lue might have been the better option here. So I feel like the Mavs should have done something like that. Also, good the Mavs, you got to get a superstar. In my opinion, you got to trade for a Bradley Beal. That's your first choice, if not him. Then try to get a C.J. McCollum, even though both of them are not going to help defensively. At least it's going to be more scoring and burden off of Luka. And then if you can't get trade or get players like those in free agency, then what you must do is trade Porzingis. Him and Luka don't have the best relationship. He showed in the playoffs that he's just not the right piece for the Mavs. So trade him away. And then re-sign Tim Hardaway Jr., and then I would get DeMar DeRozan. Yeah, he's no Bradley Beal, McCollum, believes, but that's the best you can do since his free agent class not good. And then get defensive players like trade for Jay Crowder or trade for Royce O'Neal or something like that to get you more 3-and-D guys to help you out here, because the Mavs defense was atrocious. And if you're not going to get another big all-star like Bradley Beal or CJ McCollum, which you should, then you got to trade for a bunch of those, 3D defensive players. Because you tried to do that with trades with Josh Richardson and stuff like that last year, but that just did not work. So you got to redo that again. So Mark Cuban, you're rich here. Make this happen. Now for the East. So for Washington, if I'm Washington, I know it was nice to make the playoffs again this year after not making it last year, but I would consider a rebuild here. I think they're closer to a rebuild, in my opinion, than a piece away from being a contender. Bradley Beal has been, not hesitant to say he doesn't know his future is in Washington. I bet he wouldn't mind leaving. Westbrook, he's limited in the playoffs. There's only so much you can do there. And the rest of the role players, except for maybe like a Rui Hachimura or something, or Batons, like there's just not a lot of good role players on that roster. So if I were Washington, I would trade away Bradley Beal, get a bunch of picks, and start over, or even potentially trade Westbrook, and just start all over there. That's what I would do to get better, because right now they're not going to get anywhere with their current roster, in my opinion. They hit their ceiling. New York. So first of all, for Knicks fans who are disappointed, no one thought you would be in the playoffs, let alone get to a 4 seed. Have home court advantage in that first round. So you overachieved. So don't complain, don't whine or anything like that. You'll be back next year most likely. So the next step is to obviously get another all-star. Because what we learned is that Julius Randle's definitely not a 1. And he's not even a 2 in the playoffs. He's at best at a 3. So therefore you need to bring 2 other all-stars in. But since it's New York, it's going to be hard to do that, Just try to at least bring 1 other all-star in. Or trade for 1 other all-star at this point. And then if you can do that, then you're going to be better next year. If not, then it's going to be a single story. So we'll have to see what the Knicks do there. Boston. So changes are obviously underway here with Danny Ainge retiring and Brad Stevens assuming the GM or president basketball operations position. As far as players go, if I were the Celtics, I would try to trade Kemba because I'm not liking his role at all. He had a good role last year, but this year, injury riddled. Can't rely on him as much anymore. Just too small of a guard to really contribute in the playoffs, in my opinion. So I feel like you should trade him. Better than that, you just have to hope the players are healthy, draft better, and then hopefully the new coach, can elevate them to the next level and get them back to at least the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, who that coach is, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. This would actually make sense for D'Antoni right here if you were going to hire a retread coach, just because the Celtics, I feel like their problem was more offensively than defensively in this past season. So I wonder if they're going to do something like that, or get an up and coming head coach who's never been a head coach before, something like that. We'll have to see there. And last but not least, Miami. So it's obvious what they need. They need another superstar. Jimmy Butler cannot do it on his own, and he did not play great in this series. So if the Clippers decide to blow things up, for example, then this is where Kawhi Leonard should go. He can be the best player on a team, but then he'll have to be the leader, the alpha, because that's for Jimmy Butler to do. And then he can just go in, score his 25 points, 10 rebounds a game type of thing. And then you're still going to have Goran Dragic is good. Still, and then you can still have Bam Adebayo, who's a 3rd or 4th best player, not 2nd best like he was on this past series. And then I would trade, players, like Tyler Hero for pieces because he didn't perform well. But, try to keep players like Duncan Robinson, who's a good 3-point shooter, and stuff like that. And also, you have to remember, you're going to have Oladipo coming back next year. Now, he's going to be not 100% coming in to start next year, but at some point next year, hopefully he would be healthy. So you're still going to have him. So if you have him, Jimmy Butler, Adebayo, and then bring in Kawhi, now, bam, that's a championship roster there. That's a roster that can compete with the Brooklyn Nets. So those are my advice for all the teams that lost in the first round in this playoffs this year. I'm looking forward to the next round with the Jazz and Clippers, Suns, and Nuggets. And we have already gotten a taste of the Eastern Conference action so far, which has been good. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel, tell everyone about me. Thank you very much, and y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.